overpriced. The week that Donald Trump used his position as commander-in-chief to declare war on journalists. In a combative White House news conference on Thursday, he accused the media of being out of control. Now he's gone even further, accusing some of America's best-known news organizations of being the enemy of the American people. We'll talk about that in a moment with both Democrat and Republican strategists. But first, the president returned to one of his key election pledges in South Carolina: buying American and hiring American. Trump ventures beyond the Beltway and back to a potent political promise that helped put him in office.
I don't want companies leaving our country, making their product, selling it back, no tax, no nothing, firing everybody in our country. We're not letting that happen anymore, folks, believe me.
This was the president in campaign mode, comfortable, talking jobs in a packed hangar in South Carolina, with a shiny new Dreamliner as a backdrop.
There will be a very substantial penalty to be paid when they fire their people and move to another country, make the product, and think that they're going to sell it back over what will soon be a very, very strong border. It's going to be a lot different. It's going to be a lot different.
But when it comes to a new Air Force One, Donald Trump is still pushing Boeing to offer him a better deal.
The price is too high, but we're negotiating.
The pundits are still poring over what he said in his 77-minute press conference extravaganza, and it's pretty polarized.
Two things we know for sure, as I said, we've never seen a presidential press conference like that, and just 1 month into his presidency, we know exactly what's on the president's mind.
Yes. If you liked Donald Trump before the teleconference, you loved him afterwards. If you voted for him, you go, that's the guy I voted for.
To the people who love him, he looked absolutely like he was in control, tweaking the noses of the press in there. But the difference is, this is not a campaign anymore.
We don't have to put up with our children seeing somebody lying every day on TV.
But whatever the political class think, Donald Trump got a chance to connect with voters who got him to the White House. Getting the staff he needs is proving a little trickier. Robert Harwood, a retired admiral tipped to replace Michael Flynn as National Security Advisor, has pulled out. The White House say it was about family and finance. Others claim it was a dysfunctional administration. Trump's finely tuned machine still has a few missing cogs, but he's left the Washington bubble and looks buoyant. Tomorrow he can hold the hands of the faithful as he returns to his campaign roots for a rally in Florida. But he's delivered a parting shot for those planning to cover it, tweeting, "The fake news media is not my enemy, it is the enemy of the American people." Cordelia Lind, Sky News, Washington. Well, I'm joined by the journalist and former senior advisor to both Bill and Hillary Clinton, Sidney Blumenthal. Sidney, there we see him returning to the themes that put him where he is. A shrewd move, is it not?
Well, there's politics behind it. If there's any reason behind the irrationality of the press conference, it is the politics of arousing his base. He's lost all Democrats in 3 weeks. He may not have ever gained them. He's lost the independents. But he's holding about 85% of the Republican base. That's all he's got right now, and that's who he's appealing to.
Let's turn to the issue of leaking and the investigation into the Trump administration's contact with Russia. Now, you know Hillary Clinton very well. When James Comey decided to do that 11th hour probe into her email server, some say it cost her the election. Isn't Donald Trump right to be suspicious about the intelligence agencies?
Well, he says that the leaks are real and the news is fake, which creates a sense of cognitive dissonance. So the news has to be real if the leaks are real, and there's something there. And we've had all the U.S. intelligence agencies issue a report already saying that Vladimir Putin conducted an intelligence operation to affect the U.S. election to try and help Donald Trump. And questions have been raised through the Russia dossier of Christopher Steele, who was the chief of MI6 for Russia, about whether or not there has been collusion, collaboration, and communication between the Trump campaign and the Russian operation. That's where we're at.
There are still many unanswered questions, but Donald Trump said firmly yesterday that as far as he knows, his team during the campaign weren't in touch with Russian operatives. But look, is there not a theme here of undermining Donald Trump's legitimacy, a trend that we should be concerned about?
Well, the person you should be angriest at is Vladimir Putin for having conducted this operation against the American democratic process. And it's really up now to the American Congress and to the judicial system and to the U.S. Intelligence services themselves to get to the bottom of it. And we may be at more than the edge of a political crisis, but a constitutional crisis if it goes further.
A lot of these reports, though, this week quoted anonymous sources. You're a journalist. Should we trust those? We saw one today from the Associated Press, which the Trump team has pushed back hard on.
Well, I think we know where these sources come from. They come from the Justice Department. They come from people who have been briefed by the FBI, and they come from the Congress, and they come from the intelligence community. So I think we have a sense of that. These are not men in the street, as it were, in terms of anonymous sources.
And finally, what next for Hillary Clinton?
I think that we will hear from her in due time this year, and she will reclaim her voice. She's writing a book that will be published. She will address parts of the campaign in the book, and she will begin to speak out and begin to be active again. But for now, it's Donald Trump who needs to have the stage to himself, for good or ill.
Sidney Blumenthal, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, President Trump's attack on the media has been described as out of control by critics, some even questioning his mental health. But do the voters who put him into office see things the same way? Sky's Siobhan Robbins travelled to Front Royal in Virginia to gauge the mood of Trump's supporters. An hour's drive from Washington, D.C. brings you to Front Royal. A rural and highly religious town, it's home to some of the supporters Donald Trump claims he's speaking to.
Hello, how are you? Nice meeting you.
Tom is one of them and is happy with what he's hearing.
It was the best press conference I'd ever seen a president of the United States ever hold in my entire lifetime.
The press has become so dishonest that if we don't talk about it, we are doing a tremendous disservice to the American people.
What was it you liked so much?
I like it that Donald Trump held to his promises, that he said that he was not going to allow the media to overwhelm him and things of that nature. He took them on.
Or if the information coming from those leaks is real, then how can the stories be
No, the
fake?
reporting is fake.
That was the best press conference I'd ever seen.
We head out of town to a nearby farm. Like 65% of people in the county, Charles voted Republican. He says he's a reluctant Trump supporter and still has some concerns. If you were then to mark his first few weeks out of 10 being, this has ticked every box that I was looking for, what would you give it?
For now, I'd give him probably about a 7 out of 10 for the actions that he's taken, not so much the style of it.
Do you worry about comments that he makes, like yesterday he said, oh, people would like me to just blow that Russian ship up?
Yeah, I'm worried a little bit about things like I saw in his campaign where he said things, that were either hair trigger type items or functions that maybe things that he would even just say that would be politically untenable.
Well, Donald Trump's press conference was extraordinary. For supporters in towns like this, that is exactly the president that they voted for. They see him as keeping his promises, holding the press to account, and rather cleverly he's managed to move the conversation away from those difficult headlines about Russia. Back in the town, Kelly runs a local cafe and voted Democrat. For those who didn't back the president, These are worrying times.
We're not having the discussions about the things that we should have. We're having a constant whining. Whining is the thing that I think galls me the most about how he's being attacked. Every time he says that here's something he doesn't care for, it's fake news, which is ridiculous. I mean, you're a member of the press. You have a job to do, and it's not to be pandering to somebody who's an egotistical maniac.
In this town, Kelly may be in the minority, but across the country others share her views. President Trump may be pleasing his supporters, but his actions continue to divide rather than unite America. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News.
Well, a range of views there. Now let's get the political point of view with Republican strategist and former Trump advisor Jim Dornan. Jim, yesterday you could argue that Trump played very effectively to his base. Do you think he won over anyone else?
I think he was all about his base yesterday, and I think this is what we're going to see continually through the next 4 years. Trump is going to be Trump. He's not going to change. I observed it up close and personal. He likes just telling it like it is, and that's exactly what he did yesterday, and I think he's going to continue to do that for the next 4 years.
How do you think it's going down with some of his senior staff, the likes of Rex Tillerson, for instance, and General Mattis, who some view as a sort of steadying influence on him?
I think they all knew him prior to this, and they knew what they were getting into. They're going to carry out his policies. He's a man in charge, and I believe that he's going to continue to be that man in charge, and I think you saw it in full regalia yesterday.
What about Robert Hayward, though, not taking up that position of national security advisor? Do we read in that a vote of no confidence in the president?
I think you're going to see the other side say that, but I think we need to take Reince at his word. Reince Priebus, who said he wanted to be with his family. I honestly believe that you take the offer from the president if it's given to you and if it's reasonable. You don't turn the president of the United States down.
Now, we saw a tweet this evening, as we are getting used to, late on Friday night, early on Saturday morning, Donald Trump decides to share his own personal views, hitting out at the media, describing them as the enemy of the American people. Is that going to work for him?
It's going to work with his base, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what he ran on. And I think that the give and take you saw yesterday, first of all, a little overblown by the press. I don't think it was as hostile as everybody thought it was. But, I mean, that's Trump, and he's gonna do that, like I said, for the next 4 years.
From a Republican standpoint, on the issue around the Trump administration's relationship and contacts with Russia, do you think it's going to prove problematic for some within the Republican Party who want answers? Some have asked for a fuller investigation into why Flynn stepped down and what he'd said to the Russians.
I do believe that there are those who went through the Cold War, went through it with Reagan, who are having questions right now with them. I think they're going to try to advise him to stand down a little bit when it comes to Putin, back off on the kind of love affair he's having there, because we saw a Russian destroyer off the coast for the last 3 days, and I think people like John McCain, Lindsey Graham have problems with that, and rightfully so. They were with Reagan when we went through this in the 80s.
What was striking in yesterday's news conference was that he said he didn't think that General Mike Flynn had done anything wrong by reportedly talking about sanctions with the Russians, and that was the reason why he didn't tell his Vice President, Mike Pence. Now, how significant do you think that is, that he's kept his own Vice President in the dark?
I think he walked that back a little bit yesterday. I believe that he strongly believes in Michael Flynn, but I do believe he also believes in Vice President Pence. So I think the initial statements from a few days ago are being walked back a little bit.
And do you think that this is a White House in chaos or a well-oiled machine?
Nah, I think it's somewhere in between. There's always problems the first month. I mean, Obama went through the same thing, and actually you saw Obama go through the same thing with Fox that Trump is going through with CNN right now. So there are always problems at the beginning. They'll work themselves out. They always manage to.
Republican strategist Jim Dornan, thank you very much for talking to us. Well, the White House has denied reports President Trump is considering using tens of thousands of National Guard troops to round up illegal immigrants. A leaked draft memo obtained by the Associated Press outlines proposals for an immigration crackdown in as many as 11 states, including 4 which sit on the border with Mexico. Officials have already carried out a series of raids across the country, making hundreds of arrests. Sky's Hannah Thomas-Peter reports now from New York, where fear is growing in immigrant communities.
What we're about to do right now is we're going to set up flyers informing people about ICE agents and their rights in case ICE agents come to a person's house.
Never open your door. You have the right to not incriminate yourself if you are undocumented.
These children are becoming experts at what to do if an immigration or ICE officer wants to talk to them. Contact numbers also in case of a raid. Their New York neighborhood was targeted in raids last weekend, part of Donald Trump's push to find and deport some of America's 11 million undocumented immigrants.
I'm terrified. Personally, my mom's undocumented. I have younger siblings. I have an older brother who can't really take care of himself. I'm personally terrified of the fact that I might have to lose my mom soon. It's getting wild over here. It's like you don't know where to go. People are telling you different things. My mom personally told me not to go out the whole weekend. If it's not for school reasons or club reasons, I shouldn't be going out at all.
Close by at the Immigrant Support Center, people are queuing out of the door to get passports and documents in order should they be deported to home countries. Many have been here for decades, but fear things are changing in Trump's America. Araceli, unwilling to be identified and speaking with translation help, describes how her son was abused while traveling to work.
An African American on the train just yelling him that he's a immigrant. That they need to get out of this country.
Mucha discrimination.
What we're gonna do now? What's gonna happen now? The fundamentals of this country is immigrants, but now immigrants are not welcome in this country.
People are scared to go everywhere, to go to a church, to go to school, to go to work. They're really scared.
The US government says fears are exaggerated. Of the nearly 700 people arrested in recent raids across the country, the vast majority had committed serious crimes.
ICE has described its enforcement operations in neighbourhoods like this one as both routine and targeted, with a focus on people who threaten public safety, like gang members, as well as those who've already been deported and re-entered the country illegally.
ICE should not be picking up people at schools, hospitals, and religious institutions.
Still, community activists are preparing for the raids to intensify and their scope broaden. In this training session, they discussed setting up rapid text alerts and creating networks of safe houses to shelter the vulnerable. All the while, resentment is building.
Donald Trump and his administration have based their immigration policy on lies. That immigrants create crimes, that immigrants take jobs, that immigrants suck up public resources. Every single one of those is a lie.
What makes America great? Immigrants make America great. In the face of almost constant protests, Trump is unmoved.
What makes America great?
He is doing exactly what he promised he would, enforcing the law of a country whose people elected him president. Hannah Thomas-Peter, Sky News in New York.
This is Sky News. Coming up, we'll look at the media's reaction to Donald Trump's attack on fake news. Welcome back. Well, following the president's accusations about fake news, US networks have again felt themselves in the spotlight. Here's how some of them reacted to that White House news conference. That was the media on Trump. We haven't quite got that for you, but let's have a look at his tweet this evening. He said, the fake news media, failing New York Times, NBC News, ABC, CBS, CNN is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people. Well, I'm joined now by Guy Benson, political editor of the Conservative website Town Hall. Now, Guy, you're getting a lot more access to the news conferences, to the press briefing room. Do you think it's right that Donald Trump's attacking the press?
Not that way. I think that they have been very hostile to him, and he's sort of viewing them as part of the opposition. I think that there's some merit to that, not total merit. But to call the press your enemy, I don't think that's something a president of the United States should be saying. Particularly outlets, he can say they're biased, he can say they're unfair to him. They're not the enemy. We have real enemies, and NBC News is not one of them.
What do your readers care about the most at the moment?
Well, I think a lot of our Trump-supporting readers, which is the vast majority of them, they like the fact that he's fighting back against the press, against the Democrats, really punching. So it's sort of some retribution for what they felt like they were victimized for the last 8 years under the previous president. They sort of like him taking the completely opposite approach. And then, of course, there are policy issues. Jobs in the economy, number one in everyone's mind. And there's some optimism that as a businessman and someone who wants to cut regulation and taxes, the economy will grow and the rising tide and all of that. But also healthcare, Obamacare is a big one for our readers as well.
We've got a new executive order in immigration expected next week. If it's a very diluted version of what we saw before, do you think that they'll be asking for their money back from Trump?
No. It would take a lot to get them to ask for their money back, particularly this hardcore base. I mean, he has changed positions on a number of things with relative political impunity. He would have to really, I think, betray major promises on multiple occasions for people to take a second look, because overall they like most of the things that he's doing.
Now, he's holding a rally in Florida tomorrow, described as a campaign rally. Rather exhausting prospect thinking of 2020 at this point.
Please, no.
What do you think is the significance? Will he benefit?
Here's what he's doing. He does believe that the media has been relentlessly negative towards him, and you've seen a lot of the protests against some of his policies here in Washington, at some of the airports after the travel ban. I think he wants the optics for people like us in the media to broadcast to millions of people. Here's a big crowd of thousands of cheering Trump supporters who like what I'm doing, who agree with what I'm doing. He wants counter-programming. So this is him very deliberately, I think, strategically setting up a counter-narrative.
Guy Benson from Town Hall, thank you very much
pleasure.
for talking to us. Well, that's all from this special program. Donald Trump, the disruptive president, will leave you with some of the events of a tumultuous week in US politics.
Please, look up. Strong hands, woman. Nice article. So I'm looking at 2 state and 1 state, and I like the one that both parties like. I'm very happy with the one that both parties like.
Yes, General Flynn does enjoy the full confidence of the president, and this is a big week for General Flynn.
I fired him because of what he said to Mike Pence. Very simple. Mike was doing his job. He was calling countries. Russia is fake news. Fake news put out by the media. Fake fires. I mean, they're fake. The press, honestly, is out of control. The level of dishonesty is out of control. Where are you from?
BBC.
Here's another beauty.
It's a good line. Impartial, free and fair.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. President.
Just like CNN, right?
It's crazy what we're watching every day.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy. He keeps repeating ridiculous throwaway lines that are not true at all.
We have made incredible progress. I don't think there's ever been a president elected who in this short period of time has done what we've done.
Oh, these are the beautiful
Amazing
waterfalls.
waterfalls in Brisbane.